Hey yo, what's up, everybody? Yeah, Boxer Source here again. Just wanted to kind of like do a little bit of clarification of sorts, right? Because on the midweek report, we had this topic up reference to Jaron Boots Ennis and Teofimo Lopez. Um, and at that time, I was, irritated of sorts because knowing what I know, knowing the history, I knew that that particular fight wasn't really going to go down. And I knew the reasons behind it. And I spoke with someone close to one of the camps to pretty much get the gist of why it wasn't going to happen. But now, because of the people involved or the people that were involved in reference to this, we had a lot of these media pundits do a lot of spinning. And due to that, a lot of fans have kind of bought into what those people have said. And that's something there where I kind of get really irritated of sorts as a media member, because I would think that there would be some type of integrity in boxing media like that. But as long as I've been in the game, it's pretty much been almost 10 years since I've done a podcast, but I'd say about 6 or 7 years since I've been involved in going to events and being involved in conference calls, press conferences, all that type of stuff. So I've been around a number of media members over the years. And for me to see this particular era in boxing media kind of like has me fairly irritated, because it's like a number of them don't do enough research. A number of them don't ask enough questions. A number of them don't contact the people that they're supposed to contact in order to make sure that what they have is valid and they can properly report it. And what we have is, in this day of social media, in this day of instant posting, typing and posting, that depending on who you are, no matter what you say, regardless of if it's valid or not, people are going to run with it. And so seems like we had a number of people within the media want to spin something in reference to Jaron Boots Ennis. So I want to see if we could try to go through a little bit of a backstory. Yes, I did reach out to somebody as far as like trying to have a conversation with this. So hopefully they'll be able to join me here in a bit. If not, it's cool. But wanted to just go ahead and go through this, right? So on the midweek report yesterday, I talked about the whole topic in reference to Teofimo Lopez and Devin Miles Haney. And yes, the thing was brought up in reference to Teofimo Lopez and Jaron Boots Ennis, because at that particular time, when that particular fight was proposed, it pretty much got shot down. And so when a potential bout between Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney was brought up, it looked like that would kind of go through, but because of some financials or whatever Teofimo Lopez claims is, he didn't want to go through with the fight. What has me kind of irritated is that not only did people or fans say that, oh, why didn't Boots Ennis take the fight? But it's like they completely ignored that a potential fight between those two doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay, we're talking about Teofimo Lopez, that was a unified champion at lightweight, not undisputed, unified champion at lightweight. Was able to win the WBO championship at super lightweight with one fight. And for some reason, some fans think that that constitutes him to go ahead and face Jaron Boots Ennis at welterweight. I'm going to see if I can go ahead and chop this up a little bit. And yes, I have someone on here that's going to be coming on live in a bit, but I'm going to go through this here bit by bit, piece by piece. Okay, let's go through. What is it? Teofimo Lopez. Let's see if I could look this up. Teofimo Lopez, and let's see what he has for his supposed resume. Okay, here we are. Teofimo Lopez. This should be on the rec. This should be on the box recs, right? Record of 22-1 with 13 wins by way of knockout. Okay, super lightweight division. That's what they show. Let's go down. Oops, you already see a red there. Okay, let's go ahead and ignore that little red real quick. Okay, here's Teofimo Lopez in 2018 to 2019, getting knockout victories in Lakefront Arena in New Orleans, Madison Square Garden Theater in New York City, Frisco, Texas at the Ford Center. Okay. Here he goes again. He's part of these cards, undercards, where he's getting knockout victories. He's over in MGM National Harbor, pretty much in the DMV area, gets a unanimous decision. And then faces Richard Comey for the IBF lightweight title. Second round TKO. Okay, he gets that. That puts him potentially in a position to fight for more world titles. With him being at the top rank, he gets this opportunity to face Vasyl Lomachenko, who was a unified champion, right? Had the WBC title, but ended up being franchise champion because was requested, it was granted. The WBC champion at the time, because of that, was Devin Haney. But that's a whole nother story. Let's go into this. We got Vasyl Lomachenko, 2020. We're in 2025, folks. This is 2020. Yep, I see y'all on the chat there, Topic and L-Dub. What's going on, y'all? Now, I'm just going through this whole resume of Teofimo Lopez here real quick, right? Okay. Vasyl Lomachenko gets a unanimous decision win over Vasyl Lomachenko to become the unified lightweight title champion. Excuse me. After this particular fight in 2020, he has one fight in 2021, and yes, it's against George Kambosos. Ends up losing by split decision. Still a loss. Okay, so his first defense of the unified lightweight titles, he ends up losing. Okay. After that, he doesn't campaign in the lightweight division anymore, goes up to super lightweight, has a fight against Pedro Campa at Resorts World in Las Vegas. Now, some of y'all may have been over in Las Vegas, there where they have Resorts World. It's one of those newer, casino resorts that they have in Las Vegas off of Las Vegas Boulevard. This was pretty much in a tent over at Resorts World. This is what I'm getting at here with Teofimo Lopez in a little bit. But we're just going to go through this here a little bit more real quick as I wait for our guest here to get in. So Pedro Campa, Resorts World, okay, gets a TKO victory. All right. Sandor Martin, Madison Square Garden in New York, split decision where one judge had it 95-94 in favor of Sandor Martin. And yeah, I was at that fight, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So Sandor Martin. Then he has a fight with Josh Taylor, 2023. Okay. Gets a unanimous decision win there, where ends up having 2 scores of 7 rounds to 5, 1 score of 9 rounds to 3. Okay. There you go. Now, after that, Jermaine Ortiz, Michelob Ultra Arena. Okay. Then a bout against Steve Claggett. Okay. And then you have Arnold Barbosa Jr., which was earlier this month. So after having these particular fights, let's go through it. Pedro Campa, Sandor Martin, Josh Taylor, Jermaine Ortiz, Steve Claggett. Okay. With Pedro Campa being the only fight that he's had at super lightweight, where he ended up having a victory by knockout or stoppage. Okay. Shout out L-Dub says Loma was a downfall of Teo in eyes of boxing fans' public perception. I'll go into that there a little bit. But For some reason, wins against Josh Taylor, Jermaine Ortiz, Steve Claggett, Arnold Barbosa Jr., and Sandor Martin, for some reason, constitute Teofimo Lopez to be in a fight against Jaron Boots Ennis, a unified welterweight champion. Okay. Let me go through Boots Ennis real quick because I don't think people, it's like people forget what Boots Ennis was building towards before he got to the level that he was a world champion. So I'm going to go ahead and share that here real quick. Here we go, right? All right, here it is. Jaron Boots Ennis, 34-0, 30 KOs, welterweight, 27. Okay, we're going to go down to, I was going to go down further than 2020, but let's do that. 2020. And this is something here, right? Because he was active during the time of lockdown, so to speak, after his win over Ayubov, right? Knockout. Juan Carlos Abreu, knockout. Chris Van Heerden, head clash, right? Sergey Lipinets, knockout. Thomas Delorme, knockout. Castillo Clayton, knockout. There, he was pretty much at Carson, California against Castillo Clayton on the undercard of the rematch between Jermell Charlo and Brian Carlos Castaño, where he was pretty much on the brink of becoming the top contender for the IBF welterweight championship. He gets that knockout win, and who was in attendance on that night? Errol Spence Jr., at the time the unified welterweight champion. Now, 2022 happens. He's waiting for that shot to be for the IBF. Hadn't gotten it at the time. Goes up against Karen Chikazian in DC. Gets the IBF interim welterweight championship. Waiting for his shot to face Errol Spence Jr. But everyone knows what ended up happening. Errol Spence Jr., Terrence Crawford, undisputed. Okay, cool. That happens. Now, while that happens, you got Roman Villa. He has to fight with Roman Villa, and that is what? Before you had Spence versus Crawford. And you get him with a knockout victory, right? So what you got is you got Boots Ennis stopping the number of fighters outside of Karen Chikazian at the time while waiting for his world title shot in the welterweight division against either Errol Spence Jr. or Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford defeats Errol Spence in July of 2023. And we all know what he was intending to do at the time, to go ahead and have a rematch with Errol Spence Jr. Okay. But the IBF does what the IBF does. If you don't face your mandatory, you get stripped. So Boots was just waiting for his opportunity. If Spence or Crawford didn't want to give him that opportunity, cool. But that's one thing. Now, David Evangian. David Evangian was an opponent for Boots Ennis because Cody Crowley, who was the original opponent, ended up getting scrapped because he wasn't medically cleared to have the fight against Boots Ennis. So that's why he had David Evangian. Okay. Now we go up again. Karen Chikazian. Why? Because at the time, he tried to get fights with Mario Barrios and with Brian Norman Jr. Now, if y'all checked out YSM Sports Media's channel earlier today, you would see that I was on, and also Brian Norman Sr. was on. Okay, so you go through that. They go through the whole situation of what happened at that particular time. But either way, they were looking for a unification bout at that time. Didn't quite get it. So you have Karen Chikazian again. Why? Because Chikazian is the IBF mandatory challenger. Okay. Now, real quick, what we got here? Said, what do you think about Bud jumping up to a weight class he's never been in and challenging Canelo? I'll get to that. Okay. Let me finish here, right? That Karen fight, which of course Topic was there in attendance for that fight between Boots Ennis and Karen Chikazian in Philadelphia last November. And a lot of people had some things to say about that. So did I. Now, with that being said, Boots Ennis gets a unification bout against Iman Stanionis. There's some people that had doubts of sorts of Boots Ennis after his fight against Karen Chikadzian. But I told people, I said, Karen Chikadzian and Iamana Stanionis are two different styles of fighters. In that Boots Ennis is going to show how good he is and show that Iamana Stanionis is not a fighter similar to Karen Chikadzian, and he's going to end up getting stopped. What ended up happening? He ended up getting stopped. Didn't leave the corner for after the sixth round. Okay, so we got someone in Jaron Boots Ennis that's 34-0, 30 wins by way of knockout. That is pretty much like, if we scroll down here, he's pretty much had his entire career at the 147-pound or welterweight division. Now, you mean to tell me that a fighter that is coming up from 135, was a unified champion at 135, hadn't scored but one knockout or stoppage victory at 140, that constitutes a potential matchup against the top level welterweight. Okay. So, and shout out to L-Dub. Shout out to L-Dub. Shout out to L-Dub. Okay. He says, Teo should have got that WBO title off Norman in September of 2024, but he turned it down. We all know Boots want to unify. L-Dub, you're the boxing plug. You know, I know, a number of people know that are in the know, as they say, but some people just don't follow or just don't understand what's going on in boxing. Okay. Now, even with the whole situation with Brian Norman Jr., after he had his win to become the WBO interim welterweight champion and being elevated to full champion, right? They had the whole negotiations that went down between Boots' party and Norman's party. But at the same time, he had something set up to where he would be fighting Derek Cuevas, and that was scheduled for November. But at the same time, you had Teofimo Lopez being approached by Top Rank saying, hey, you're the WBO super champion at super lightweight. What does that mean? That means as a super champion, if you move up to welterweight, you get first dibs to fight for the WBO welterweight championship. Let me see. Was there someone that had a WBO super championship at super lightweight that went up to welterweight, and the first fight that he had at welterweight was for the WBO welterweight championship, and he eventually became the undisputed welterweight championship? Yeah, that's right. That was Terrence Crawford. First fight, he fought Jeff Horn, right? So if Terrence Crawford could move up to welterweight and fight Horn, then how come Teofimo Lopez didn't accept the fight with Brian Norman Jr. for that WBO welterweight championship? Can somebody answer that? Okay. So when that was proposed to him, as L-Dub said, he turned it down. Top Rank offered another fight at super lightweight, and that was Subriel Matias. He turned that down too. And that is where Top Rank got fed up with Teofimo Lopez. We already had what happened after he defeated Vasily Lomachenko, and he went through that whole thing with the purse bid. Now, here we are, fast forward 2024. They're going through the same thing here with Teofimo Lopez. And they're about done with him. So they said, you know what? We'll have something where we could work out a deal with a fighter that could be under another promotional body or whatever it is, and see if y'all can get this guy off our hands. That is where initially Boots Ennis was mentioned. That was last year. And it fell through last year because, of course, Boots was looking for unifications or nothing at that time. So after he had his fight with Karen Chikadzian, guess what he was looking for? Another unification bout. That's what he signed with Matchroom Boxing for. He had a 3-fight deal. with one option. That's the report. And he already went through 2 fights with Matchroom. So he had one more fight and then one option. So that one fight had to be a unification, or else, Matchroom would have been in some real problems with Jaron Boots Ennis. All right. So that's why you ended up having Boots Ennis fighting Iman Stanionis for the IBF and WBA titles. Okay. Now, with that being said, he handles business, take care of business, stops him. He wants more titles. Brian Norman Jr. was, at the time, pretty much, some say he was available. But remember, Brian Norman Jr. had a fight against Derek Cuevas on, what was that, March 29th, pretty much a couple weeks earlier than Boots Ennis' fight against Iman Stanionis. But soon after that fight that he had with Derek Cuevas, they had something in the works, right? And with that being said, if he's going to go ahead and fight Jin Sasaki, it is what it is, okay? Now, you have that, and then you have the thing there with the WBC champion, Mario Barrios. We all knew, even after the fight with Abel Ramos, that Mario Barrios was being rumored to be a potential opponent for Manny Pacquiao. Now that fight has basically been official. So folks are saying, hey, well, okay, you got, Brian Norman, he's occupied. He's going to be fighting in June, and Mario Barrios is, he's going to be fighting Manny Pacquiao, so that frees Jaron Ennis up so he could fight Teofimo Lopez. No. What did people forget when Mikey Garcia went up from 140 pounds to face Errol Spence Jr. at 147? What happened? What happened then? After a few rounds, you see Mikey Garcia be like, oh, well, you know what? I made it in the ring. I felt, the power there of Errol Spence Jr. Let me see if I could just go through a few more rounds, see if I can make it through 12, and then I'll be good. Let's go through another example. Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo. Jermell gets knocked down pretty much, what was that, round 5? After the rest of that, you've seen him, he was like, I'm going to try to see if I could, score a couple punches here and there and get through the 12 rounds. But yet, we have someone who is unproven at 140 pounds. You shouldn't really go off of one win in 2023. It's 2025. He has one win over Josh Taylor. He goes ahead and he has this win over Arnold Barboza Jr. Here's his options. If he really wants to go ahead and force a fight with Boots Ennis at this time, why not move up and say, let me go ahead and have this fight with Brian Norman Jr. for his WBO title. And therefore, if Boots Ennis wants to become undisputed, he's going to have to go through me. But he's not thinking like that. He is not even challenging the guys there at 140 pounds that are current world champions. He's not going after no Alberto Puello. He's not going after no Gary Antoine Russell. He's not going after no Richardson Hitchens. He could have been a 2-division, at the very least, unified champion. You're a unified champion at 135. You have an opportunity to become unified champion at 140. And you don't want to do that? Come on. You don't want to be a unified champion at 140 or try to become undisputed champion at 140, but yet you want to have or try your luck, supposedly, against the top-rated welterweight that has no affiliation to Top Rank whatsoever. Yet you have someone that is affiliated with Top Rank, that has a world championship that you could go after in Brian Norman Jr., but you declined it. So if you really want to go after Boots Ennis, try to get something that he wants while he's at welterweight. Get the WBO title. You fight Brian Norman, you beat Brian Norman, you get the WBO welterweight title, then Boots Ennis will have to come after you then. But You ain't even doing that. Now, hold on. Here's a question. Topic said, has Conor Ben become the biggest name at welterweight? I don't know about all that because I'm not all too sure that Conor Ben could even make welterweight at this point. I'm sorry. I do not think that Conor Ben can make welterweight at this point. I would be surprised if he does. Listen, y'all. We're talking about Conor Ben that was supposed to fight Chris Eubank Jr. years ago and didn't because of his old eggs and all that type of stuff. And then when he went through that whole suspension of sorts, what did he do? He didn't fight in the UK. He fought in America. And in his 2 fights in America, he weighed in at 153 pounds and 150 pounds. Then weighed in at 156 against Chris Eubank Jr. last month. So you're going to go from 153, around 150, be up at 156, and then try to compete at 147 again? Nah, I don't see that. So Conor Ben, if he has another fight and it's at welterweight, I'll be surprised. Because even with that, you talk about the name, I don't know. Because he had his fight there with Chris Eubank Jr. over in Tottenham. But if he fights like anybody else that isn't a world champion, then what does he pull? That's the question, you know. So I'm not sure, one, if he's going to be competing at welterweight, and two, if he does, who would be an opponent out there that he will be able to face at this juncture. I mean, if I go through, let's see, I'm going to go through this thing here real quick with the ratings to see if he's still around there. He's still in the WBC rankings at 147 at number 3, right? So number 3 in the WBC. All right. Now, is he able to make 147? Like I said, I don't know. But I doubt that he can make 147, especially when the IBF themselves, they don't rank him at 147. They rank him at 154 at number 5. So come on. Now, back to this whole thing here with Teofimo Lopez. If you have fights with Jermaine Ortiz and you have fights with Steve Claggett, all right, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be able to fight a top level welterweight. Okay. Now, another thing that was brought up with reference to Teofimo Lopez, and this was brought up like earlier today in conversations, and I've seen it here in posts talking about, well, Teofimo Lopez is kind of known by the casual fans. Listen, there is a difference between having a following from boxing fans and casual fans. And that reflects in where, when, and who you fight against. Right? Now, you got Teofimo Lopez and here's another one, right? Teofimo Lopez, someone brought up Teofimo Lopez's popularity on social media. And this is the same person that I brought up yesterday that made a ridiculous comment saying that Boots was ducking Teo. Absolutely foolish. And he's a member of the media too. Yes, I mentioned his name. Absolutely foolish. And when he kind of doubled down on it, it was brought up that, well, why are you making some foolish points when we've seen Teofimo Lopez in these fights? We've seen him headline fights, okay? And we've seen the attendance in those fights. And I've been in one of them. That was at Madison Square Garden against Sandor Martin. Now, like I said, if you want to build off the momentum of your win at the time against Vasily Lomachenko, that's one thing. But here it is. I'm going to bring it up one more time. Let's go through Teofimo Lopez's resume again. Let's go by when he fought Vasily Lomachenko. Yes, That was under lockdown. Yeah, I know all of that. Okay. But even with that being said, yes, it was at the bubble. Your next fight was at the theater at Madison Square Garden because at the time you were being evaluated as a draw. You haven't headlined a bout yet. Richard Comey fight was the undercard. That was pretty much what the co-feature to Terrence Crawford, right? So you have this bout against Vasily Lomachenko that's at the bubble at MGM Grand. That's your first headlining event, okay? And let's see here, man. I'm gonna go ahead and try something here real fast. So hold on just a second, y'all. But so let's go through this again because I'm getting my phone blowing up and all that type of stuff. So that's the thing about it. I'm gonna give you a couple minutes to try to explain yourself, okay? But I'm gonna have someone else on. But I'm gonna try to have you explain it. But I'm gonna go through this again, right? Vasily Lomachenko, he has that win. They evaluate him and say, "Hey, this is what you are. This is what you're worth. This is what we can pay you." That's top rank. Teofimo Lopez says, "Nope, I beat Vasily Lomachenko. I'm the dude. I'm the star. I'm whatever," which is absolutely foolish because if people know Vasily Lomachenko, even with all of those accolades and everything like that, it wasn't like he was a superstar in the States either. So what in the world was Teofimo Lopez talking about at that time? So they tell him what he's worth. He refuses it. They make the thing there with George Kambosos be in the purse bid. We all know what happened with all that. And then it ended up being on a matchroom card at the theater at Madison Square Garden. Why? Because it's Teofimo Lopez against George Kambosos Jr. If Teofimo Lopez was that guy at that time, would it be at the theater or would it be at the main arena? It wouldn't be at the theater. So that shows where he was at the time, and he ends up losing. So then all of that momentum he had, he pretty much had it taken away right with that loss to George Kambosos Jr. Okay. Then he doesn't get in the mix again until he goes up against Pedro Campa 9 months later. Okay. So you got that going on, and he gets that win over Pedro Campa. Right? So after getting a win over Pedro Campa, he has his next bout against Sandor Martin at Madison Square Garden. Now, I'm going to tell y'all right now, okay? I was at that bout at Madison Square Garden. You're talking about one of the most historic venues in the world, one of the most historic sports venues in the world. And Teofimo Lopez couldn't even fill out half of that stadium. Not even half. Okay. So he has that bout against Sandor Martin. Ends up being a split decision. Doesn't look good in that particular fight. Gets knocked down in round 2. Should have been another knockdown. And even though he gets this thing here with the WBO International Super Lightweight title, or at least defends it of sorts, right? Y'all heard what he was saying after that fight. Do I still got it? Then he goes up against Josh Taylor. Now, I talked about this earlier today with Josh Taylor. 19-0, WBO Super Lightweight Champion, former undisputed Super Lightweight Champion. But we're talking about Josh Taylor here, who had decision victories over Jose Carlos Ramirez, had a decision victory over Regis Prograis, had a split decision victory, if I'm not mistaken, over Jack Catterall, where Jack Catterall should have gotten the victory. He should have, and he didn't get it to him. Okay. So after that decision against Jack Catterall, he gives up the IBF title, he gives up the WBC title. He gives up the WBA title. And he hadn't fought in over a year. So you got a fighter in Teofimo Lopez that has these fights against Pedro Campa and Sandor Martin, where Josh Taylor's basically been inactive. So you have a fairly inactive Josh Taylor going up against Teofimo Lopez. Unanimous decision. Okay, he becomes WBO and lineal super lightweight champion. Excuse me. Now, after those two fights, who does Teofimo Lopez fight? Jermaine Ortiz and Steve Claggett. Jermaine Ortiz had his loss to Vasily Lomachenko a couple fights before fighting Teofimo Lopez. Then Teofimo Lopez has his bout against Steve Claggett, has pretty much like a shutout victory, but again, that's a decision win. So you had, 4 straight decision wins? And then here this year, another unanimous decision win against Arnold Barboza Jr. Listen, you have decision wins against these guys. You haven't really fought the other top guys in the division, and yet that constitutes a fight with Jaron Boots Ennis? No. Got someone here that's on the queue that's going to be jumping on here that has kind of brought up Teofimo Lopez on multiple occasions and having him tied to Jaron Boots Ennis. But I want to hear it once again from the topic. What's going on?
What it do, baby? What it do?
All right. We've had this conversation a few times, okay? And here for 2 separate occasions on this live, I've shown the resume there of Teofimo Lopez. And I see that he's only had 1 stoppage win while under 140 pounds, okay? And for some reason, because he mentioned Boots' name, some people think that that constitutes him actually having a fight with Jaron Boots Ennis. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He's not affiliated with Jaron Boots Ennis. He doesn't have a history of Boots Ennis like that. So I don't see where it comes from. Anywhere, out there. Why isn't he taking care of business at 140 pounds?
What you mean?
As in, like I said before you got on here, okay? He was a unified champion at 135 pounds. He wins 1 belt at 140 pounds. Why can't he unify at 140 pounds before even challenging any top welterweight, much less the top welterweight in Jaron Ennis?
So I don't really know. I just like to be equal. You know what I mean? Like, as far as like playing both sides, like for Teo, I supported that case because in this era of guys kind of wanting the easy way to the top and then maybe a big fight, they want.
Hold on, y'all able to hear him? Are y'all able to hear him? Hold up. You see if you check. You ever see if you still hear? You hear me? Damn. I see if you get. Damn, man. I don't know if you on the phone or something like that, but we can't necessarily hear you. Well, let's see if we could, try to get him on here. Yeah.
Get on that.
You able to hear me? Hold on. You say y'all can't hear me. God damn it, what's going on? Hold on a second, y'all. Hold on. Let me stop this sharing with this. If y'all are able to hear me, just let me know. If y'all are able to hear me right now, let me know if y'all are able to hear me. Because I got to see if he'll be able to get back on and stuff like that. There. So hold on. He's trying to check up back in here. You back on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can now.
So like I was saying, I just respect the guy, and I'm gonna put myself in the fighter's shoes more so. You know what I mean? I think some of his messaging gets lost. You know what I'm saying? The way he goes about it, the stuff that he be saying, like about wanting to be great, I have no problem with. You know what I mean? He wants to fight. Now, the way he might go about it might rub people the wrong way, but everybody calls out somebody. You know what I mean? Think about everybody that's ever called out Tank name, and Tank be like, bro, get off my nuts. You know what I'm saying? Tank be on that. But that don't stop people from still saying Tank, 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 Tank. Tank, Tank rely be like, bro, get off my like hop off. But they still say Tank, but Teo say Boots, and it's like a crime. You know what I mean? Like, Boots is a great fighter, like I've said before. You know what I mean? But I think Teo, has put in some work. And as far as 140, how long has he been a champion at 140?
Since 2023.
How long has all the guys that's at 140 that's like got belts now been champions?
It's been for a number of them. It's been recent.
So is Teo feeling like how Boots feels? Like, I'm
No,
the guy. Is that how Teo's feeling? I'm the guy. Like, just everything y'all be saying about Boots.
okay.
I
What?
think Teo might have that same mindset at his division. That's why he's trying to go up.
Nah,
How y'all
nah.
say I'm the
Here,
champion? I'm this and this is. Teo probably feel that same way. Was like, what have these guys proved? These guys is
no.
just getting their first straps.
But
I done
here's the
been there and
issue.
done all of that already.
Yeah, but here's the issue. You had a world champion that was there at 140 pounds that was able to go up from 135. That was there while you were at 135 in Devin Miles Haney. Went up to 140, challenged the WBC champion in Regis Prograis, defeated him. And yet
Right?
you still haven't mentioned his name. That's one. Now, two, here's the thing with Teofimo Lopez. We talk about this thing here with Boots Ennis and him mentioning Boots Ennis' name, right? That isn't the only person that he's mentioned. He's also mentioned Terrence Crawford and challenging Terrence Crawford while he was at 140 pounds. And as I mentioned there before, he was a world champion at 20 in 2023. Okay. Terrence Crawford was still in the welterweight division in 2023. So when he mentions Terrence Crawford's name, we're the people that are, boosting up that, oh, maybe he should go ahead and fight Terrence Crawford. You don't see that. Why? Because they knew that there would be no reason for Terrence Crawford to face Teofimo Lopez at that time. Fast forward to now, there is no reason for Jaron Boots Ennis to face Teofimo Lopez at this time. None.
Me
It doesn't
personally,
it
bro.
has nothing to do. Hold on. It has nothing to do with the intentions of Boots Ennis trying to unify. Because it's either unify or move up. Teofimo Lopez is at 140 pounds. He's not at 154. So there's absolutely no point for him to face Teofimo Lopez at this point. Unless Teo does or did what he should have done, and that is accept a fight with Brian Norman Jr., but he refused that fight.
Do you think,
Oh,
once again, though, as a champion, do you think the same way, like, how when guys get their belts, like when they a challenger, that's all they want is a title shot. How am I going to become a champion if nobody gives me a shot? Nobody gets a shot. Then they get their belt. Then they start acting like, man, who is this person? He got to earn it. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. They get their first strap. And now, of course, you're supposed to defend it. You know what I'm saying? I think any fighter, once you get your first strap, I say two defenses. You know what I'm saying? Because that's a big accomplishment. So if you fight for a world title, I say you can get two mandatories or two defenses. You ain't gotta, to me, jump straight into another war. You know what I'm saying? But I think some guys do that. Now, just for me, I feel like Tio might have that mindset of being, like being a guy that's went undisputed at that time. Teo was the first guy of that era, of that what they would call in Four Kings era, to jump out off the porch, basically. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like he feels like I was the first guy to jump off the porch, get off the leash, and fight up. You know, I was the first guy to fight upward. So I feel like that's his mindset of like, I should be celebrated as such. You know, that's when everybody was scared to fight upward. Guys were either going to fight a guy that's on the way out, or they was going to fight downward. You know what I mean? But Tio was the first young guy with like what 15, 16 fights, when most guys is fighting guys that's 33 and 7 at that point in their career. You know what I mean? Or fighting guys that got day jobs. He's fighting one of the top guys in the world, you know? So I feel like once he did that, that just how every young fighter, any champion, once they get their belt, start moving. He felt like I should be awarded the top opportunities, you know, and then to
Wait,
jump up a second weight class, he definitely probably feel like, yo, there's nobody that had if there's nobody out here that has this won two divisions, won titles in two divisions, I don't want to hear them, you know what I mean,
that
mentioned over me or any of that, because that's what the sport's about, the
no,
accomplishments.
no, no,
It's about the accomplishments.
no. That
You
that's another
play
thing.
to
Hold
win
on,
the
hold on,
game.
hold on. That's another thing that you brought up. That accomplishments mean something. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Not always. No. Okay. So with that being said, you got Terrence Crawford, two division undisputed champion. Does that mean that he should really go up and face someone like a David
Canelo
Benavidez?
Alvarez.
A David Benavidez, not Canelo Alvarez. David
All right.
Benavidez.
All right, pause. Let me say a point right here. Boom, pause. Perfect that you brought that up, right? What makes Crawford deserving of going up, right? From 147, having one fight where he had to work a little bit at 154. Everything that everybody's been saying. Now, clearly, the Boots and Teo fight, that's out the window, so it's not really too much stock to really put into this fight. Boots already done said no. So at this point, there's no real point of us really like gassing it too much, you know what I mean? But what makes Terrence Crawford deserving of jumping up from 54, from 47 to 54 in one fight, skipping 160, then going to 168 with no fights at either 160 or 68, and then fighting for an undisputed championship? But Teofimo is
Neither
a
one of them do.
crime.
You're
But
bringing
I'm
up a
saying
question, and I'm saying neither one of them do.
I
Neither one
see
of them. The only
similarities
thing,
in both of them.
again, with Crawford and Canelo, they've been in the game a very long time. And the thing with Canelo is too, some people felt like Canelo would have been facing Errol Spence Jr. if Terrence Crawford didn't defeat him. Now you're talking about the same Canelo Alvarez that when he had a 3-fight deal of sorts with TGB Promotions, or some would say Heyman Boxing PBC, his first bout under that was against Jermell Charlo. Where did he come up from? 154. Okay. What his next bout? Jaime Munguia. Did he have a stint at 168 for a little bit? Yes, but he also came up from 160 and had a world championship at 154 pounds, WBO 154-pound champion. Then his third bout was against Edgar Berlanga. Yeah, he's been at 168, but come on, Edgar Berlanga, I'm just saying, right? So here's the thing, right? You're having someone in Terrence Crawford going up against a guy that kind of like started his career below 168 pounds. L Boxing here says, "Hey, this is Buzz Lifetime Achievement Award fight with Canelo. Let him try to be great again." That's what L says. Now, you talk about Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez is not anywhere near as accomplished as Terrence Crawford.
You
Nowhere
can't
near.
say that though.
No, yes,
You
I can.
can't. You
Yes, I
can't
can.
really say
I'm
that.
telling you that right now. Yes, I
How
can.
not? How
Yes, I
not?
okay, that's you. That is
How
you.
not?
Hold on. You got a guy in Terrence Crawford that won the WBO 135-pound title, correct? Yes or
Right.
no? Okay.
Right.
You got a Terrence Crawford that became the undisputed champion at 140 pounds. Yes or no?
140.
At 140 pounds, undisputed champion at 140 pounds. Oh, you're cutting off. You're going off and on again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, 140, undisputed 140, undisputed 147.
Uh-huh. Terrence Crawford that went up to 154 pounds and won the WBA and the WBO interim championship at 154 pounds. Yes or no?
Right.
Okay, so how does Teofimo Lopez winning unified at 135 and one title at 140, how is that equal to Terrence Crawford?
I mean, of course they not, because Teo got. I mean, what's the name? Bud got like 40 something fights. So
That's not
clearly,
it's not even 40 something fights. I'm saying, how are you having Teofimo Lopez with what he's done with the accolades that you say that he has equal to Terrence Crawford?
so like again, like I said, how many fights do Teo got? First of all, that's gonna let
Teofimo
me.
Lopez
If he got
is
under
now
25 fights,
22 and 1.
okay. You show me somebody else that got that many fights that has accomplished what he's accomplished in this sport.
You So you're talking about somebody in Teofimo Lopez that has had opportunities that a lot of other fighters don't have.
As far as what?
As far as being affiliated with certain organizations. Let me bring this
Right.
up for you again. Teofimo Lopez was not a champion up until recently, right? Before he had the fight against Vasily Lomachenko. 2019, he had the opportunity to win the IBF lightweight championship. But guess what? Devin Haney was already a world champion by then. Okay. So when 2020 happened, him getting the opportunity to fight Vasily Lomachenko was because both of them were under top rank. Devin Haney wanted that opportunity with Vasily Lomachenko because he was the one going after the WBC belt, but Vasily Lomachenko undercut him. And then once he became the interim champion, that is Devin Haney, he only got elevated to become WBC full champion because Vasily Lomachenko was named the WBC franchise champion. And as of we're in 2025. Where's this franchise championship at? Oh, it doesn't exist anymore. But that's a whole nother story. Now, with it being 2020 lockdown, you could only do so much under that time period. So guess what? Teofimo Lopez has his opportunity. One, because it's locked down. Two, because both of them are under top rank. So he gets the win. Okay, cool. He gets the win. But guess what? He doesn't even have a one successful defense of that unified lightweight championship. Not one. Not one. His
Can I
first
ask a question?
defense. His first defense. He ends up losing.
Can I ask a question? With a fight for Teo fighting Loma of that magnitude, do you think it hurt him that that fight happened in the pandemic where he couldn't gain the exposure of the crowd like he should for winning a fight that big? Clearly, because you that's one of your talking points. So clearly, I'm gonna answer that one and say yeah, because you use that in your talking points. That
So even with that, right?
do you think that's the case though?
Not really.
Okay.
Here's the problem. Okay.
I'm
Even
not here to
before the
argue
whole
tonight
thing,
neither.
even before the whole lockdown thing, right? Vasyl Lomachenko wasn't that guy to be a serious draw outside of the lockdown. Like, for example, I mean, you got, okay, Vasyl Lomachenko, he's from the Ukraine and all that type of stuff, right? Not that much different from Alexander Usyk. Alexander Usyk has to, at least at this time, has to travel, to go to different places. But he doesn't necessarily have like a home base anywhere to where he could build a crowd, build a following, all that type of stuff, so that a lot of people attend his fights. He has to go elsewhere, right? Vasyl Lomachenko is almost like that, almost similar to that when he came up. Even with those fights that he had against Gary Russell Jr. or what was it, Rigondeaux or anybody like that, like he wasn't really pulling that type of crowd. You know what I mean? So thing about it is like you bring up Vasyl Lomachenko and that term accolades again, right? Vasyl Lomachenko at the time was a multi-division world champion, won a title at 126, won a title at 130,
Bro, we're
unified at
not gonna act like
145.
Loma wasn't the guy, bro. We're not gonna do that. I'm not gonna let you act like they wasn't calling him no
No, I am.
Maschenko.
Hold on. What did I just tell you? What did I just tell you about Vasyl Lomachenko?
Talk to me.
What did I tell you? It's like you're not even listening. You're just hearing what I'm saying and you're replying. What did I tell you about Vasyl Lomachenko and his overall effect as a draw, as a fighter? He didn't have that pull. He didn't have that pull before 2020. He didn't. I'll give you an example.
So, all right,
okay? Hold
when
on.
you breaking it down, bro.
I'll give you a great example. Vasyl Lomachenko versus, let's see. Let me go back to his little bit of a little resume. Vasyl Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell. Where was that fight at?
I don't know.
The UK. So when I told you about Alexander Usyk traveling to have these fights, Vasyl Lomachenko was basically doing that same thing. Why? Because he didn't have that type of following where he would be able to build a crowd somewhere. He's fighting guys at the theater at Madison Square Garden after having a fight at Madison Square Garden himself. So he's not someone that has been a huge draw. No, he's fought here. He's fought here in the DC area at the MGM National Harbor. And this is the same guy that was a featherweight champion, super featherweight champion, unified lightweight champion. So, and you can't necessarily say that when, okay, I'll give you another example, right? Because you want to bring up Vasyl Lomachenko and his accolades, right? Okay, how about this one? How about, what was it? Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. He was another guy that was regarded as a top level fighter when he was doing this thing. Does that mean he was a draw? No. Having accolades doesn't always mean that you're a draw in boxing. No, it doesn't. So having Lomachenko as an example for Teofimo Lopez, it doesn't work. And Gold member is shout out you, man. He says you need to start holding Vada accountable for false positive reports on fighters. Ryan and Magia, Vada be on something, man. Because just go on their website and look up the fighters, and then try to get the dates put together, and then you might see a couple of fighters that aren't necessarily on there for fights. So that's a whole different story. Now back to this thing here with Lomachenko. Like I said, multi-division world champion, unified champion at lightweight, had a top rating in pound for pound rankings from a lot of publications and all of that. That still doesn't mean that he was an overall draw. That doesn't mean that he was a superstar. He was not. So when Teofimo Lopez defeated him, did he kind of get some of that as far as like notoriety for beating him? Yes. But does that mean that he becomes a superstar? No, it doesn't. And Top Rank told him that. And he didn't believe that. So what did he do? He went ahead and he just waited for a purse bid against George Kambosos. And then he got starry-eyed when Triller, who wasn't necessarily established in the boxing game, gets a bid that almost doubles the second bid that was on the table. And when they didn't go through with that fight under Triller, His overall value that would have been there at the time went way down. And then he ends up fighting George Kambosos and ends up losing. So guess what? His value goes down even more. So you're talking about a Teofimo Lopez that loses to George Kambosos Jr., then has his fight up against Pedro Campo, right? And where's that? In like some type of a tent outside of Resorts World in Las Vegas. Then he has a fight against Sandor Martin where it wasn't even halfway full. It wasn't. But yet, he's supposedly a superstar. Then he has a fight against Josh Taylor, which is in the theater in Madison Square Garden, not the big arena, the theater at Madison Square Garden. Then he has a fight against Jermaine Ortiz at Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas, not MGM Grand Garden Arena, not T-Mobile Arena, Michelob Ultra Arena. See what I'm getting at? Miami Beach against
Can I
King Flagging.
interject?
What else do you
Okay,
have?
I have a question.
Okay.
Like I say, I'm not Teofimo's advisor. I just like boxing and guys daring to be great. I respect any fighter. I don't care if it's a B-side guy. If the guy's willing to get in there and get it popping in this sport, I will always salute. So what I'm saying, was he a champion during these periods? Was he a champion during this stretch? During this stretch of bouts that you all the bouts you name, was he a title holder?
After his win over Josh Taylor in 2023, he was a title holder. We're in 2025.
Okay.
Okay.
So for me, I'm gonna say this: if I was Teofimo's advisor, I would definitely understand. If you were Teofimo's advisor, you would definitely understand where he's coming from. If you yourself had
No.
Teofimo Lopez as your champion, he's accomplished everything that he represented the boxing source. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
He
can hear you.
represented, and he was signed to the Boxing Source Promotion Company, and he was your only signed fighter, and he had the belts and the Ring magazine and all of that, and he was your guy, and you were bankrolling the campaign behind Teofimo Lopez. You would want nothing but the best for him, and you would say he deserves nothing but the best because one of the work that he's put in, you can actually get behind it. It's not fabricated work. You know what I'm saying? For a promoter, I'm gonna say from a business standpoint, if you can get a champion that can actually fight and has got a little charisma, he's so much easier to market and sell. Firstly, so much easier to market and to sell. All I have to do is put him where he needs to be and pump his head up. But if he can actually fight in this business, some guys can talk, but they can't walk. This guy can actually fight. He's been a champion. So if I was to sign him, I could really push him out there and say, yo, I got the baddest 140 guy out here. You know what I mean? That's my perspective when I look at it like that. I put myself in an advisor's view. You know what I'm saying? I get it. Like, okay, he might be a little outmatched fighting Ennis if they were, but like I said, that fight is dead. That fight has no legs. So we can't really put too much stock into that. But if I was Teofimo's advisor, like I say, I personally would be like, yo, these guys at 140 just got belts. They got to fight. They got to show me something. I put my work in already. I've got my hands dirty. I've showed y'all guys what I can do. I don't feel like I should have to keep on. I put my behind on the line fighting Lomachenko in the era of the O. I was the first guy that jumped off the porch. Now, the rest of these guys that's getting belts just can't get to me. I'm the big dog. I didn't did everything. I didn't two division. These guys just getting their feet wet, and they were trying to. These guys got to get in here and fight these. You know what I'm saying? I moved up to 140 and fought the guy. Okay, he had the belts, so he was the guy. However you want to put it, however you want to break down his performances, however you want to go down in the list and do all of that. Josh Taylor
Oh
was a
man.
undisputed
Uh,
140
no,
pound champion. Was he not?
you
Prior to
still
fighting
not
Teofimo
understanding the
Lopez,
situation, though. You're still
was
not
Josh
understanding the situation.
was Josh Taylor undisputed prior to fighting Teofimo?
You're still not understanding the situation.
So was he the guy at the division?
No, it was
So
disputed.
hold on,
I
hold on,
would
hold
say,
on, hold
hold
on.
on. I was saying it was disputed. Why? Because when he fought Jack Catterall, a number of people felt like Jack Catterall won that fight. Now that's number
Well,
one.
who cares?
Now,
He
hold on.
didn't. He
No, no, no,
didn't.
no, 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 no. You spoken. You spoken. You've had your piece. You're talking about trying to market somebody in Teofimo Lopez that I have shown multiple times that all the stuff that he does, all the stuff about, oh, he's performing in the ring, he's done this, he's done that, it still hasn't resulted in good numbers out there when it comes to these fights, regardless if it's Josh Taylor, Sando Martin, Jermaine Ortiz, or anything like that. So you want to go ahead and make that pitch, go ahead and talk with Split T Boxing about that. Maybe they can take that into account. But let's talk about what's actually happening with Teofimo Lopez. We're talking about Teofimo Lopez that you say had supposedly proven
Can you hear
himself
me?
at 130. Hold on, that had proven himself
Can
at
you hear me?
135 pounds against Vasily Lomachenko, and then the very next fight against a fighter that he shouldn't have had any trouble with, according to a number of people, and George Kambosos Jr., he ends up losing to him. Losing. Okay. Then he has a couple of fights against Pedro Campa and Sando Martin. He gets an upset of sorts with Josh Taylor, the same Josh Taylor that ended up giving up all of those belts with the WBO. So off of one fight, one, I guess off of one fight, one singular fight, that constitutes him to say, hey, I'm way above all of these other guys at 140 pounds, even though I have one fight under my belt against a Josh Taylor. Okay. Now, this is the same Josh Taylor, like I said, had close decision wins over Regis Prograis and against Jose Carlos Ramirez. It's not like he absolutely blew by every single fighter there at 140 pounds before he faced Teofimo Lopez. So that's number one. Now, off of that Josh Taylor win, doesn't carry on that momentum at 140 pounds. No, he does not. He fights a Jermaine Ortiz. He fights a Steve Claggett. Okay.
Can you hear
So,
me?
yeah, I can hear you. Now, here's the
Okay.
thing. You have this opportunity to say, you know what? Let's say he doesn't want to have any business to do with any of these guys at 140 pounds. He was proposed a fight against the WBO welterweight champion Brian Norman Jr. He is a WBO super champion at 140 pounds. When you are the super champion and you move up to welterweight, you get first dibs of the WBO champion at welterweight. He had that opportunity. He turned it down. So he could have had the chance to become a 3 division world champion if he fought and would have been able to defeat Brian Norman Jr. But he said no. So you talk about, oh, let's see if he wants to go for greatness. Well, he could have tried that against Brian Norman Jr. and become a 3 division champion. Yet he didn't want to do that. He could have fought a former IBF super lightweight champion and Super Matias. He didn't want to do that. So is it really about him trying to go for greatness, or right now is it really about him trying to just get money? That's the thing with Teofimo Lopez.
I mean,
Oh shoot, man, that is going in and out again. Going in and out again for the joints, man. Um, shoot, man. Hold up a second. Hold up.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Nah, it's my service, bro. My service. It's me. It
All right.
ain't you. It's me.
All right.
But you can hear me though.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm gonna say
So,
this, bro.
mhm.
At this point, right? I'm gonna say first of all, every amateur boxer's dream
Damn.
is to win a world title. Like a bunch of, you know what I mean? Of course they want to get paid, but they don't really know, like, you know what I mean? But their dream is, I want to become a world champion. I want to get that. Teo has done that. So at this point, yeah, I want to get, I'm seeing these other guys out here that's fighting for no belt, and they making more than what I'm making, and I'm a 2 division champion. That's like you working at a regular job and some new guy comes in and you've been working at the job for 6 years. They come in making more than you and they ain't been there but a week. You like, ho, 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 ho. What you say the other day? Hell to the no. No, no, and
That's
hell
not.
no.
Well, you're not even bringing this up. Hold on a minute, man. Hold on.
I'm gonna say, no, man. Y'all got this new guy making more than me, bro. Y'all tweaking. I've been holding y'all down for 7 years, gang. And that new guy coming off the street making more than me. That's probably how TL feels, But like I say, for me, I look at it from the business side and from a fan side removed, having worked on both sides of the street. I would say, like, if I was representing Teo, I would, like I say, I would sign Teo if I was a promoter. I would. I'm not gonna lie. Well, we would have to PR train him a little bit, but I would sign the kid and I would make
Fire
him
his
be the
ass.
star that he is.
Banish him. Banish him. Fire him. He's done. He's finished. Kaput. That comparison you made really doesn't apply in this sense because you
Which one?
already have a gauge. Hold on. You already have a gauge of a performance from someone, right? Now, if you see the results of someone, regardless if they work for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and they have this certain level of revenue that they pull in, compare that to someone that's been in there for about 2, 3 months, and yet they're pulling in a lot more revenue than the guy that's been there for 3 or 5 years. You're not going to pay them the same. You're not, because this particular person is bringing in a whole lot more for you than the other one that's been there for years. This is across the board in the sport of boxing. If I know that I have somebody that is known to garner tickets, sell tickets, bring fans to the stadium, in comparison to someone else that's been in the game for a long time, could be a world champion, because there's been many world champions that haven't really drawn, and yet they should be able to get the same pay as someone that is bringing you a whole lot more revenue. That doesn't necessarily work like that. So with Teofimo Lopez, even though he has been a unified 135-pound champion, even though he has been the WBO super lightweight champion, if he's not bringing in the people that you're looking for him to be at the stature that he supposedly is, you're not going to pay him that type of money. You're not, because it's not worth it. You're not getting a good return off of that. So if you got somebody that, let me see. Okay, I'll give you one. Oh, he kind of dropped off, and I might close here really soon. So I'll give you a comparison. Okay, Keyshawn Davis. All right, Keyshawn Davis last year was on the undercard early in the year, right? And he had his fight against Jose Pedraza. Then he's on the undercard of Shakur Stevenson versus Artem Harutyunyan when he faces Miguel Madueno. Then he's able to headline a bout in his hometown, Scope Arena, last November against Gustavo Lemos, sold out. That gets him to the point where he's able to fight for the WBO lightweight championship against Denis Berinchyk at the theater at Madison Square Garden. Now, next week, he's going to be back at the Scope Arena, headlining a bout there against Edwin De Los Santos. And, I'll check it, but most likely that fight's going to be sold out too. Okay. So if I know, and he's under top rank. Yeah, that's right. He is under top rank. Oh, so you mean to tell me that I got somebody in Keyshawn Davis that is able to sell out an arena on multiple occasions, and I'm not giving them as much money as this person right here that has been a multi-division world champion, but yet can't pull the numbers that he claims that he's worth. That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Shout out to my guy Thomas Hill in the building. Yo, what's going on with you, man? So that type of comparison doesn't necessarily work because I mean this is all across the board in business. Like if you're not pulling in the numbers, you can't expect to be paid at that same rate in comparison to somebody that is pulling much more in sales, so to speak. Right? For example, in sales, because if they see that you're not performing as much as they are, and they're getting paid a certain rate, either they're going to ask the person to pay them a higher rate, or they're going to go somewhere else so that they'll be able to get that paid. So you can't really bring that up as a comparison, right? So now with Teofimo Lopez, if you're not garnering the attention and no freaking goddamn Instagram followers translate into fans being in the seats, it doesn't. Dan Canobio, oops, did I say that? So you can't compare Instagram followers between Teofimo Lopez and Jaron Boots Ennis when Jaron Boots Ennis has headlined 2 bouts at Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Check the numbers there for that. Check the gate receipts for that. And compare that to what Teofimo Lopez has done. Nowhere near, nowhere close. So don't talk about Teofimo Lopez being some type of star or casual fans may know who he is and all that type of stuff. That does not translate into butts in seats when Teofimo Lopez fights any type of opponent. So you can't even bring that up. So as I mentioned before, 2024, I'm going to go through this one more time, y'all. 2024, Teofimo Lopez, after he had the win over Steve Claggett, had the opportunity, as what was it? My guy, the boxing player said, L-Dub said, he had the opportunity to fight Brian Norman Jr. for the WBO belt. And he said no. That's why Norman ended up having the time where he could have fought Derek Cuevas, right? So he declines that belt. He declines the bout against Subriel Matias. And yet, for some reason, because Boots Ennis declines the bout with Teofimo Lopez, some people, like Dan Canabio, wants to claim that Boots is ducking Teofimo Lopez. That's absolutely stupid. Yes, I said it. As a media member, I said it, I'll say it again. It's absolutely stupid. You're going to ignore all the stuff that Teofimo Lopez did in 2024, declining bouts with Brian Norman Jr., declining bouts with Subriel Matias, and say nothing about it. But yet when this gets brought up after supposedly Teofimo Lopez says, I'm Dora the Explorer and I'm looking for Boots, that constitutes as an actual call out and that y'all want to validate that as a fight. But yet when Teofimo Lopez called out Terrence Crawford, where was all that energy at? I'll give you one even further. Should I go into this thing here with my TikTok account? I don't even know if I can pull it up. I don't even do that. I'll do this. How about this? What about what happened when Keyshawn Davis called out Teofimo Lopez? Did Teofimo Lopez answer that call out? No. When Teofimo Lopez was at the Box Fan Expo in Las Vegas last year and Keyshawn Davis stepped up to him at his booth, did Teofimo Lopez do anything about that? No. But where's the backlash from that? Where's the people saying that, oh, Teofimo Lopez is ducking Keyshawn Davis? You don't hear that, do you? But yet, for some reason, a guy that is in a unified champion in the welterweight division that has no affiliation with Top Rank is supposed to be facing someone within Top Rank. Makes no sense. But you still got some fans and some media members who have some idiotic tendencies that want to go ahead and try to constitute this fight. Okay. So that being said, that is, what I had to go ahead and release in reference to that. I thought I was going to be able to have your brother Smitty on here for this conversation, but I think something came up for him. So had this conversation here with Topic, and Topic tried, but failed. Like, you can't have someone that is there at 140 pounds going up against the top guy 147 and say that constitutes as a valid fight. Did anyone kind of consider Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence Jr. as a fight that should have happened at that particular time? Nah, not really. Nah. But yet Teofimo Lopez here against Boots Ennis. So you know what? As I mentioned it on Wednesday, and I mentioned last Wednesday, you will get news in reference to Ron Boots Ennis and what he's going to do. We thought we'd have been able to hear it by now, but we got to wait on Eddie Hearn. But we got to wait on a few things here when it comes to that. Okay. So with that being said, actually, if you want to have like some type of hint in reference to all of that, hit up YSM Sports Media or go on to boxingsource.net. We have something on the rumor mill that kind of hints at that. But with that being said, it's the Boxing Source. Hopefully, this is the last time that I address this topic. Shouldn't have to talk about this anymore. Really shouldn't. Now, if there's one or two particular people that may potentially bring it up next weekend, then maybe you'll see me respond to that live in person. But outside of that, I shouldn't be talking about it anymore. Once again, thanks everyone for listening in live. Hit the like button if you like the material. Hit the subscribe button. You did have, of course, earlier Coach Bob Santos. So you check out that conversation. That was a very good conversation there with Coach Bob Santos. And we'll be back at it with the Boxing Source podcast on Sunday. Check out the DMV Boxing Network. Tomorrow evening, we're going to have Unified Champion Franchon Cruz Dezerm to join us. And with that being said, folks, I am out, y'all. Peace.